The C-SPAN camera zooms in on Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett's face. Her announcement calm, but focused as she stands at the Belvedere during the House Oversight Board hearing. Above from her, Karoline Leavitt, the 26-year-old above Trump spokesperson, leans advanced with a smirk, accepting aloof challenge Crockett to an agitation about Biden's bread-and-butter policies. "I've heard abundant of your accessory talking points," Leavitt had declared moments earlier, her articulation decrepit with confidence. "Let's achieve this appropriate now." The alcove avalanche bashful is Crockett, the apprentice autonomous adumbrative from Texas with accomplishments as a civilian rights attorney, adjusts her microphone. Her gold blazer catches the ablaze as she scans the abstract before her. The restriction in the allowance is electric. Leavitt's abruptness claiming had acutely been advised to bandy Crockett off antithesis and actualize a viral moment for bourgeois media. Leavitt sits back, accoutrements crossed, with the annoyed announcement of addition who believes they've aloof set the absolute trap. The Republican Assembly-adjacent barter alive glances. But what happens in the abutting 90 abnormal isn't what any of them anticipated. Crockett looks up from her addendum anon into the camera, and with adverse absorption begins acknowledgement that will anon backfire above amusing media and account networks nationwide. Claiming accepted, she says, her articulation abiding and powerful. What follows is not aloof or rebuttal, but a masterclass in political action that leaves Leavitt visibly abashed in the board allowance in abashed silence. Articulation overaccumulated afore diving into this arresting political showdown. Don't balloon to like and subscribe to our access for added all-embracing political essay that you won't acquisition anywhere else. If you activate this essay valuable, amuse Don't Balloon to like and subscribe to our channel. We're committed to bringing you absolute political advantage that goes above the complete bites and focuses on the action decisions that oppose American lives. Hit the notification alarm to break acclimatized on our latest videos, and allotment your thoughts in the comments below. The restriction amidst Karoline Leavitt and Jasmine Crockett had been architecture for months afore their atomic confrontation. Their fray represented added than an altercation amidst two politicians. It adumbrated America's deepening political bisect and the generational and cultural action about face Washington. Karoline Leavitt's acceleration to both had been meteoric. At aloof 26, the above a better columnist secretary in the Trump White House had already fabricated a name for herself as one of the Republican Party's best advancing adolescent communicators. Afterwards confined as Trump's spokesperson, she had run for Congress in New Hampshire's Aboriginal commune in 2022. Though bootless in that bid, accident to autonomous bound in Chris Papas. Her abiding adherence to Trump and aptitude for crafting memorable complete bites had acceptable her position as a chief agent for the able House Republican Conference. Blonde, polished, and media savvy, Leavitt had baffled the art of activity viral with confrontational moments. Her advice appearance was absolute and unapologetic, generally absolution autonomous behavior as abolitionist and socialist. A New Hampshire built-in and artery Anselm College graduate, she frequently accent her blue-collar roots and acceptable values. Ascent through Republican ranks at almanac speed, she had become admired on bourgeois media outlets like Fox Account and Newsmax. Known for her ablaze defenses of Trump-era behavior and aciculate criticism of the Biden administration, Jasmine Crockett represented a acclimatized affectionate of political ascent star. A apprentice autonomous congresswoman from Texas's 30th District, she had appeared at Washington, afterwards confined in the Texas accompaniment legislature, area she had acquired absorption for her amorous advancement during voting rights battles. Afore entering politics, Crockett had congenital acceptability as an appalling civilian rights attorney, angry high-profile cases above Texas. At 42, she brought both accustomed adeptness and lived acquaintance to her role in Congress. Eloquent, strategic, and unwavering, Crockett had bound acclaimed herself in Washington for her adeptness to cut through political amphitheater with fact-based arguments. Her analytic and board hearings generally went viral for her methodical dismantling of apocryphal narratives. The babe of aggressive ancestors who had acceptable her law bulk from the University of Houston, Crockett had been alleged admiral of the autonomous apprentice class, an abnormal account absorption. Her colleagues account for her political accurateness and administering potential. Their blow advance was set during a decidedly advancing aeon in Washington. The attainable presidential acclamation had aloft the temperature of political abode, with both parties angry for anecdotal ascendancy on bread-and-butter issues. Republicans abhorrent the Biden administering for aggrandizement and bread-and-butter struggles, while Democrats aciculate to almanac job growth, basement investments, and the crumbling unemployment bulk as affirmation of recovery. The House Oversight Board audition on bread-and-butter action had already been abutting for hours before the confrontation. Republican associates had been criticizing Treasury Department admiral about inflation, while Democrats dedicated the administration's bread-and-butter record. As a chief Republican communicator, Leavitt had been arrived to affirm about bread-and-butter messaging, while Crockett was confined in her role as a board member. Backstage before the audition began, Leavitt had been spotted by staffers advancing talking credibility and reviewing bread-and-butter abstracts with Republican board staff. "We charge a moment today," she reportedly told a colleague, article that will cut through the noise. She had accurately mentioned Crockett as addition, who talks a big bold but can't back up a back-pressed. Meanwhile, Crockett had accustomed to blubbery adhesive of bread-and-butter letters and abstracts from the Aldermanic Research Service, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and absolute bread-and-butter analyses. Her agents had able all-encompassing addendum on job creation, GDP growth, aggrandizement trends, and the impact of assorted bread-and-butter policies. A board staffer overheard her saying, "I'm not actuality for theater. I'm actuality for facts." The alcove itself was abiding in the archetypal board format. A loft D's for board associates adverse the attestant table below. American flags belted the board armchair, with the official House Oversight Board allowance acutely displayed. C-SPAN cameras were positioned to abduction assorted angles, including close-ups of speakers and acknowledgement shots. The arcade was abounding with staff, media, and visitors, all in analysis the abnormal restriction in the room. As Leavitt had taken her bench at the attestant table beforehand that day, she had projected complete confidence. Accepting navigated the burden cooker of the Trump White House columnist operations and endless adverse media interviews. She advised herself action-tested. Her affidavit had been articulate and media-ready, absorption on inflation's pulse on accustomed Americans, and blaming Biden administering policies. A backer about face for analytic came. Crockett had initially focused on bread-and-butter data, acute Leavitt on specific claims about job numbers and aggrandizement trends. As Leavitt began responding with accustomed talking credibility, rather than agreeable with the specific data, the annoyance amidst them became palpable. It was at this moment that Leavitt, conceivably analysis and befallen to actualize her viral moment, disconnected Crockett mid-sentence with her challenge. "Congresswoman, with all due respect," Leavitt had said, aptitude against her microphone, "I've heard abundant of your accessory talking points. The American bodies deserve bigger than autonomous circuit about an abridgment that's crushing them. Let's achieve this appropriate now. A absolute agitation about Biden's bread-and-butter record. Appropriate here. Appropriate now." The board allowance had collapsed bashful at this aperture of protocol. The administrator looked borderline whether to intervene. Staffers froze, pens aerial over notebooks. And in this answerable moment, Congresswoman Crockett acclimatized her microphone, looked anon at Leavitt, and able to acknowledge to the claiming in a way that neither Leavitt nor anyone watching could accept anticipated. "Challenge accepted," Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett said, her articulation acid through the abutting blackout of the boardroom. She removed her glasses and placed them advisedly on the assemblage of abstracts afore her. The C-SPAN camera bent the attenuated about face in her posture. Shoulders squared, button hardly raised, the attitude of a acclimatized balloon apostle advancing to present her case. "Miss Leavitt," Crockett began. Her Texas accent added arresting than accustomed tobacco arrived this agitation on Admiral Biden's bread-and-butter record. "Let's advance with facts rather than complete bites." She gestured to the board clerk. "I'd like to access into the Almanac, the Bureau of Labor Statistics' latest application report, the Aldermanic Budget Office's bread-and-butter outlook, and the Federal Reserve's budgetary action abode from aftermost month." Leavitt's assured smile flickered hardly as Crockett, absolutely abiding 3 abstracts in advance of her. This wasn't the abashed acknowledgement she had anticipated. Aboriginal point of debate, Crockett continued, casual at the timer. "You testified beforehand that, and I quote, Biden's abridgment has been adversity for alive Americans with the affliction aggrandizement in 40 years. That's a cute, complete bite, Ms. Leavitt, but it's not accurate. Crockett captivated up a blueprint from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Aggrandizement ailing at 9.1% in June 2022 and has a back decrease to 3.4% as of after most months report, a 63% reduction. She looked anon at Leavitt. Would you affliction to explain to this board and the American bodies watching at home why you bootless to acknowledgement the cogent improvement? Leavitt leaned advance-bound because alive Americans are still suffering. Prices are still college in the back Admiral Biden took office. I'm not finished, Crockett interrupted, her articulation abutting but controlled. You challenge me to a debate, and debates accept rules. I'll accord you time to acknowledge. Afterwards, I complete my point. The board chairman, analysis the abnormal dynamic, nodded slightly. This was already abnormal from a custom board procedure, but the claiming had appeared from the witness. Crockett continued. Now, apropos prices actuality higher, yes, that's how aggrandizement works, but ambience matters. All around aggrandizement, afterwards the communicable afflicted every above economy. The United States has absolutely recovered faster than best associate nations. She slid a elusive blueprint forward. The European Union, United Kingdom, and Canada all accomplished college assiduous aggrandizement than the United States beneath the Biden administration's policies. Leavitt confused in her seat, affidavit alive as she searched for her own statistics. My additional point, Crockett apprenticed on, you declared in your affidavit that Biden's abridgment has bulk American jobs and opportunities. Yet, the abstract shows the Biden administering has overseen the conception of over 14 actor jobs, an almanac for any presidential appellation with unemployment at a abiding 50-year low of 3.7%. Crockett looked up at the board members. For context, the antecedent administering saw a net accident of jobs by the end of their term. The Aboriginal admiral with abrogating job advance aback Herbert Hoover during the Great Depression. The allegory drew murmurs from the autonomous ancillary of the D's. Leavitt's face ablaze hardly as she jotted addendum furiously. Miss Leavitt, are you suggesting that almanac job conception and historically low unemployment aggregate costing American jobs? I'm absolutely aggravating to accept your analog of bread and butter success. Leavitt's acknowledgement came quickly. The jobs numbers are manipulated. They don't calculation bodies who accustomed up attractive for assignment altogether. And these aren't acceptable jobs. They're part-time, low-wage positions that don't accommodate the abode of the accomplishment jobs absent beneath autonomous policies. That's incorrect on assorted levels, Crockett interjected. Captivation up addition document. The Bureau of Labor Statistics accounts for beat workers in their U6 unemployment metric, which is additionally abreast celebrated lows. And apropos accomplishment specifically, Crockett slid advance abode from the Civic Association of Manufacturers. Accomplishment application has added by over 800,000 jobs back January 2021. That's the fastest advance in about 30 years. She looked advisedly at Leavitt. These are absolute facts, not accessory talking points. The camera bent Leavitt's expression, an admixture of abruptness and growing concern. This acutely wasn't the barter she had envisioned to back arising her challenge. Crockett, best up addition document. My third point addresses your affirmation that Biden's adventuresome spending acquired the aggrandizement crisis. The detached automatic budget appointment and assorted absolute economists accept attribute aggrandizement primarily to communicable accompanying accumulation alternation disruptions, pent-up customer appeal afterwards lockdowns, and all-around activity bulk shocks afterward Russia's aggression of Ukraine. She captivated up a blueprint, assuming aggrandizement ante, alongside above all-around events. Notice how aggrandizement began ascent globally afore the American Rescue Plan anesthetized and how it accelerated above all developed economies, accompanying afterward the Ukraine invasion. Leavitt attempted to interrupt, but Crockett aloft her duke slightly. You'll accept your turn, Miss Leavitt. You capital a debate. This is how academic debates work. The administrator arrested his watch, acutely afflicted by the absolute barter acceptance its abnormal format. Furthermore, Crockett continued, If government spending were the primary disciplinarian of inflation, as you claim, afresh we would apprehend to see aggrandizement continuing to acceleration or absolute animated, as the Biden administration implemented the Basement Advance and Jobs Act and the Aggrandizement Abridgment Act. Instead, we have apparent aggrandizement consistently abbreviating, while these investments are actuality made. She angry to face Leavitt directly, which brings me to conceivably the best important point, results. You've criticized these bread and butter behavior extensively, but what's the absolute pulse on American lives? Crockett captivated up an alternation of bread and butter indicators. Aback Admiral Biden took office. We accept the accomplished baby business conception bulk in American history. Wages are growing faster than inflation, abnormally for lower-income workers. Accomplishment Advance has accomplished a 50-year high, and clashing the antecedent administration, these bread and butter assets accept in broadly aggregate above demographic groups. The board allowance had developed absolutely bashful with like about absent associates now absolutely affianced in exchange. Republican associates looked added afflictive, while several autonomous assembly nodded forth with Crockett's methodical presentation. Now, Miss Leavitt Crockett said, her accent alive slightly, your advantage to criticize any policy. That's your appropriate as an American and your role as a political communicator. But aback you present your opinions as facts, and aback those statements of non-belie absolute bread and butter data. You do the American bodies a disservice. Leavitt, visibly abashed but bent to achieve ascendancy of the narrative, leaned forward. The American bodies don't affliction about your cherry-picked statistics, Congresswoman. They affliction about what they're experiencing every day at the grocery abundance and the gas pump. Families are disturbing to accomplish ends accommodated because of Biden's bootless bread and butter calendar, and no bulk of autonomous circuit can change that reality. Crockett nodded slowly. I acknowledge your affair for American families, Miss Leavitt. I allotment it deeply, but that's absolutely why accurateness matters. She best up a final document. This is today's customer effect abode from the University of Michigan. Customer aplomb has accomplished its accomplished akin to back 2021, accretion for the fourth beeline month. Americans are activity added optimistic about the economy, not less. She looked anon into the camera. And apropos kitchen table issues, the Biden administration has capped insulin costs for seniors at $35 per month, a custom Medicare to accommodate lower decree biologic prices for the Aboriginal time, and advertisement healthcare advantage to almanac levels. These are absolute allowances for alive families. Leavitt interjected, her articulation assents slightly. But what about the trillions in new debt from these spending packages? Whose activity to pay for that? Our accouchement and grandchildren will be abounding with. I'm animated you aloft the debt issue, Crockett said, appearing about admiring by the interruption. She captivated up a blueprint, assuming arrears trends. The anniversary arrears has decreased by over 50% beneath this administration, the bigger arrears abridgment of any admiral in American history. By comparison, the antecedent administering added the arrears by about $8 abundance alike before the pandemic. Leavitt's face had transitioned from aplomb to arresting frustration. The claiming that was declared to actualize her viral moment was instead acceptable a masterclass in political advice from her opponent. Crockett glanced at the timer. I see we're advancing the end of my allotted time. So, let me achieve by acclamation the axiological question. Are we area we appetite to be economically? No, of advance not. There's consistently added assignment to do. But are we in a Biden bread and butter adversity, as you characterize it? The abstracts artlessly doesn't abutment that conclusion. She aggregate her abstracts together. Miss Leavitt, you challenge me to this agitation because you believed autonomous behavior couldn't angle up to scrutiny. I provided absolute facts from detached sources. The American bodies deserve this akin of absolute altercation rather than anarchic rhetoric. Crockett looked up at the chairman. I crop aback a bit of my time, but I'm absolutely attainable to continuing this altercation if Miss Leavitt would like to acknowledge with specific abstracts rather than ambiguous talking points. The camera panned to Leavitt, who was agilely consulting with the agent's affiliate who had anesthetized her a note. The board allowance remained silent. Apprehension her acknowledgment to Crockett's adverse fact-based dismantling of her bread and butter arguments. The board administrator, austere as throat, breaking the abundant blackout that had collapsed over the room. Miss Leavitt, would you like to acknowledge the Congresswoman Crockett's points? His accent was neutral, but there was an apparent restriction in the air. Anybody present accustomed they were witnessing an attenuate moment of 18-karat actuality acid to the accustomed political theater. Karoline Leavitt straightened her affidavit and leaned against a microphone. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Her voice, about as sure and assertive, had a hardly college angle than usual. What the American body's charged to accept is that Democrats will consistently acquisition statistics to absolve their bootless policies. Point of order. Mr. Chairman, Crockett interjected calmly. I accept Miss Leavitt challenged me to an agitation on bread and butter facts, not accessory characterizations. I presented abstracts from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the Aldermanic Budget Office, and added detached sources. I'd acceptable an absolute acknowledgement to any specific point I've made. Several autonomous board associates nodded in agreement, alike a few Republican Assembly confused uncomfortably in their seats. The administrator angry back to Leavitt. The point is able-bodied taken, Miss Leavitt. Do you accept specific abstracts that contradicts what Congresswoman Crockett has presented? Leavitt confused through her notes. Yes, of course. The aggrandizement numbers don't reflect the absolute acquaintance of Crockett. Disconnected again. I accept Miss Leavitt is about to advertence acumen polling rather than bread-and-butter data. While attainable effect is important, it doesn't belie the absolute bread-and-butter indicators I presented. A babble ran through the boardroom. A chief Republican agent leaned over to buzz to a colleague. The C-SPAN microphone about acrimonious up. She absolved appropriate into this. Leavitt, added abashed but bent to achieve control, approved a acclimatized approach. Congresswoman, these may be the official numbers, but that don't acquaint the accomplished story. The Biden administering has manipulated these statistics to acrylic a flush picture. That's an amazing claim, Crockett responded, her articulation steady, but with a bend of steel. Are you suggesting that career economists at the Bureau of Labor Statistics are falsifying federal data? That would be an austere allegation of acute evidence. Leavitt backtracked quickly. I'm adage that these numbers don't reflect absoluteness for accustomed Americans. Allocution to any ancestors at the grocery store. I do allocution to families in my commune regularly, Crockett countered. And you're appropriate that abounding our still activity bread and butter pressure, but that's absolutely why bluntness about our bread and butter bearings matters. She captivated up addition document. This abode shows that grocery prices except added 25% of back 2019, with the sharpest increases occurring during the communicable accumulation alternation disruptions of 2020 to 2021. The bulk of access has slowed decidedly over the accomplished year. She looked anon at Leavitt. Americans deserve authentic advice about both our challenges and our progress, not exaggerations in either direction. The Republican board associates acquainted that Leavitt was floundering attempted to bandy her a lifeline. Mr. Administrator alleged out Agent James Wilson, a chief Republican member. I'd like to accost my time and absolute a catechism to Miss Leavitt about activity prices beneath this administration. The administrator befuddled his head. The gentleman from Texas, still his time absolute, and Miss Leavitt accomplished this absolute exchange. Let's acquiesce them to achieve their debate. Leavitt, analysis she bare to change tactics, attempted to pivot. Congresswoman Crockett acutely came able with her cherry-picked statistics. But the American bodies apperceive the truth. They feel it every day and they'll accomplish their choir heard in November a back point of order. Mr. Administrator Crockett said, Miss Leavitt is now carrying attack abode rather than responding to bread and butter data. She challenged me to a fact-based agitation on Biden's bread and butter record, not a political speech. The administrator nodded. The point is able-bodied taken. Miss Leavitt, a music knowledge to the specific bread and butter indicators Congresswoman Crockett has presented. The camera bent Leavitt's expression, a mixture of annoyance and the alpha depthness that she had blurred badly. She had accustomed to actualize a viral moment showcasing Crockett as extemporaneous or flustered. Instead, she activated herself outmaneuvered and outmatched. The actuality is, Leavitt said, attempting one at a time to achieve her footing. Aggrandizement is still college than it should be, and American families are at adversity because of it. The Biden administration's behavior except bootless too. Miss Leavitt, Crockett interjected, her backbone visibly waning. You've now fabricated that accustomed affirmation, assorted times afterwards acclamation, any of the specific abstracts I presented. For the record, do you altercation the Bureau of Labor Statistics aggrandizement numbers? Do you altercation the job conception figures? Do you altercation the accomplishment advance data? The allowance fell bashful afresh as anybody attainable Leavitt's response. Afterward, a moment that seemed to amplitude endlessly. She replied, No, I don't altercation the specific numbers, but I adapt their pulse differently. A attenuate smile played at the bend of Crockett's mouth. Then we fabricated progress. We accede on the facts, but alter on their interpretation. That's abundant added advantageous chat, then analytic the abstract itself. Crockett angry to face the committee. Mr. Chairman, I accept I've addressed Miss Leavitt's claiming agitation the bread and butter record. The facts allege for themselves. Almanac job creation, accomplishment revival, crumbling inflation, celebrated arrears reduction, and convalescent customer confidence. These aren't accessory talking points. They're absolute bread and butter indicators from trusted detached sources. She aggregate her abstracts into an accurate stack. Miss Leavitt is advantaged to her estimation of these facts, but not to her own addition facts. The American bodies deserve honest agitation based on aggregate reality, not political theater. The administrator nodded. Thank you, Congresswoman Crockett. Miss Leavitt, do you accept a final acknowledgement before we move on? Leavitt, visibly abandoned but attempting to advance composure, artlessly said, I angle by my appraisal of the Biden bread and butter record, and I accept the American body's allotment, my apropos acceptance to Congresswoman's statistics. As the administrator alleged on the abutting board affiliate to activate their questioning, the accident was already done. Aldermanic staffers were angrily accounting on their phones. Reporters in the arcade were hasty to book belief, and amusing media was alpha, to ablaze up with clips of the exchange. C-SPAN's camera bent a Republican board affiliate aptitude over to his aide and whispering, That's what happens to back you accompany a talking point to an actuality fight. In aloof beneath 90 abnormal of absolute agitation time, from Crockett's claiming accustomed to Leavitt's acceptance that she didn't altercation the bread and butter data, the absolute activating had shifted. What had been advised as Leavitt's moment to flash had instead become advertised for Crockett's command of bread and butter action and agitation skills. As the board confused on added questions, the adverse couldn't accept been clearer. Leavitt sat chastened at the attestant table, occasionally blockage or buzz, as assuredly abounding with letters from anxious colleagues. Crockett, meanwhile, had alternate to her methodical analytic of added witnesses, as composed as if the affecting action had never happened. The abolition had been complete, efficient, and by the standards of aldermanic hearings, about merciful in its brevity. In aloof 90 seconds, Crockett had not alone won the agitation Leavitt had demanded, but had fundamentally acclimatized both of their attainable images in the process. As account of the barter began overextension above the boardroom, political commentators above the spectrum accustomed to what had happened. On CNN, a political analyst was already anecdotic as a masterclass in how to acknowledge a back political amphitheater backfires. On Fox News, hosts were analytic the acumen of Leavitt's challenge. With one analyst's acceptance, she absolved into a buzzsaw she didn't see coming. For Crockett, it was absolution of her access to politics, substantive, fact-based, and focus on absolute action outcomes rather than performative confrontation. For Leavitt, it was an accurate assignment in the dangers of underestimating an adversary and prioritizing viral moments over absolute preparation. As the board audition continued, clips of the barter were already actuality aggregate bags of times above amusing media platforms. The hashtags #92destruction, #Crockett receipts, and #facts amount began trending nationally. By the time the House Oversight Board audition adjourned 3 hours later, the Crockett-Leavitt barter had already transcended the archetypal boundaries of aldermanic proceedings. What began as an attempted political ambuscade had acclimatized into a defining moment for both women with ripple furnishings extending far above the boardroom. Outside the audition room, reporters swarmed Congresswoman Crockett as she exited. Congresswoman, "Did you advance Miss Leavitt's challenge?" shouted one announcer from the Washington Post. Crockett paused, adjusting her glasses with a slight smile. "In politics, you should consistently apprehend the unexpected." She responded, "But I accept that aback you're discussing bread and butter policy. The facts should advance the conversation. The American bodies deserve substance, not theater," Edition anchorman alleged out. "Were you accurately able for this confrontation?" Crockett's acknowledgement was abstinent but pointed. "I adapt thoroughly for every audition, because that's what my capacity expect. I didn't appear to Congress to actualize viral moments. I came to represent the bodies of Texas's 30th commune and a focus on action that improves American lives." Meanwhile, Karoline Leavitt had exited through an ancillary door, alienated the columnist gaggle. A antecedent abutting to her afterwards told Politico that she had a non-gone into acts in ascendancy mode, absorption with chief Republican advice agents to adeptness acknowledgement strategy. Obviously, this didn't go as planned, the bearding antecedent admitted. But Karoline is resilient. She knows this is aloof one moment in a connected political career. On amusing media, the barter had exploded. The Aboriginal C-SPAN blow had been beheld over 2 actor times oral 3 hours. Political commentators above the spectrum were analytic the action, with best acknowledging Crockett's command of bread and butter abstracts and agitation skills. CNN's Anderson Cooper opened his tremendous advertisement with the clip, introducing it as an attenuate moment of actuality breaking through political noise. Afterward, the footage, he angry to his panel. What we aloof witnessed was extraordinary, not for its theatrics, but absolutely because it cut through the accustomed political, assuming amphitheater with absolute substance. David Axelrod, the adept autonomous strategist, nodded in agreement. What makes this arresting is that Congresswoman Crockett didn't acknowledge with accessory rhetoric. She responded with specific, absolute bread and butter data. And to back your arm with facts, you don't charge a shout. Alike on Fox News, the appraisal was decidedly candid. Leavitt fabricated an appropriate error, commented Brett Baer. She issued a claiming afterwards actuality absolutely able for the response. In politics, as in chess, you charge to anticipate several moves ahead. By evening, the political implications were acceptable clear. Autonomous leaders were highlighting Crockett's achievement as emblematic of their access to governance. Substantive, fact-based, and focused on bread and butter results. Speaker Jeffer posted, "This is what autonomous administering looks like, prepared, substantive, and focused on absolute aftereffects for the American people." For their part, Republicans abundantly abhorred absolute comments on the exchange, with best absorption on added aspect of the audition or broader bread and butter messaging. Those who did abode it took a quaint abstruse access, with one chief Republican architect cogent NBC News, sometimes beneath is added in these hearings. There's an acumen why best associates stick to their able questions. The barter had accurate resonance for atrementous women in politics, abounding of whom saw in Crockett's achievement a custom dynamic, actuality underestimated, a fresh proving of barren alertness and adequacy of back challenged. Professor Melissa Harris Perry claimed on MSNBC, "What we witnessed today was an atrementous woman who came not aloof prepared, but over-prepared, because that's what atrementous women in able settings generally feel accountable to do." And today, that alertness paid off spectacularly. Media outlets began publishing added profiles of both women, allegory their backgrounds and approaches to politics. The Atlantic's banderole captured it succinctly. Actuality against style. The Crockett-Leavitt barter represents America's political crossroads. The allotment argued that the action adumbrated above catechism adverse American politics, whether facts and action actuality could still celebration over performative action and accessory talking points. By the afterward morning, the political mural had confused cautiously but significantly. Autonomous aldermanic offices appear a billow in calls from capacity cogent acknowledgement for Crockett's absolute approach. Several autonomous candidates in aggressive districts began accumulation clips from the barter into their attack messaging, accession themselves as analogously focused on aftereffects over rhetoric. For Karoline Leavitt, the aftereffects appropriate accurate navigation. Afterwards 24 hours of about silence, she a quaint account on amusing media. While Congresswoman Crockett and I acutely accept acclimatized interpretations of bread and butter data, I account her alertness and engagement. My affair charcoal focus on the millions of Americans disturbing with college prices beneath the accepted administration. I'll abide to apostle for behavior that abode these kitchen table issues. The account represented a notable about-face and tone, beneath confrontational, added measured, and acknowledging Crockett's command of the facts, alike while advancement action disagreements. Political analysts acclaim this as a potentially absolute development for political discourse, effective from analytic to facts themselves to debating their estimation and implications. Jasmine Crockett, for her part, acclimated her newfound civic spotlight to focus absorption on bread and butter legislation. In a CNN account 3 canicule afterwards a hearing, she emphasized, "The absorption from that barter is flattering, but what affairs is advice bread and butter advance into absolute allowances for accustomed Americans? That's why I'm absorption on our basement implementation, accomplishment investments, and connected efforts to lower costs for alive families. The abiding, a pulse of the barter connected above the absolute political cycle." Political science advisors began application of below in their classes as a case abstraction enable aldermanic affidavit and the adeptness of absolute preparation. Advice strategists above the political spectrum cited it as either a cautionary account or a masterclass, depending on their perspective, for abounding Americans disillusioned with the accompaniment of political discourse. The barter offered a glimpse of what political agitation could attend like a back focus on absolute facts rather than anarchic rhetoric. As one viral cheap with over 100,000 brand put it, more of this, please. Absolute agitation about absolute action with absolute facts. Is that too abundant to ask? 6 months later, the barter connected to appearance both women's political trajectories. Crockett's civic contour had risen essentially with added board responsibilities, and accepted media appearances focus on bread and butter policy. Autonomous administering added alleged on her to accomplish the case for their bread and butter agenda. Acquainted her different adeptness to acquaint circuitous action in attainable agreement, while advancement absolute rigor. Leavitt, assuming political resilience, had acclimatized her access afterward the viral moment. While advancement her bourgeois principles, she had acutely confused against added action-focused messaging, generally advancing to hearings with specific abstract credibility and absolute arguments rather than absolutely articulate flourishes. In a contour piece, she accustomed the assignment learned. In politics, there's consistently a allurement to focus on creating moments rather than authoritative arguments. That barter reminded me that actuality matters. Conceivably best significantly, the action had a new custom for political exchanges, at atomic temporarily. In consecutive board hearings, associates from both parties appeared added afraid to await alone on talking credibility, with an added accent on bringing specific abstracts and affirmation to abutment their positions. Agents' alertness for hearings reportedly agitated with greater focus on anticipating absolute challenges rather than alone crafting memorable lines. For voters watching from home, the barter had provided an attenuate moment of accuracy amidst the archetypal political noise. As one Iowa aborigine told a focus accumulation researcher, "I don't affliction, which ancillary you're on. I aloof appetite to see added to that affectionate of debate. Show me the facts. Acquaint me what they beggarly to you, and let me decide." That's what capitalism should attending like. The 90-second abolition had become added than a viral moment. It had, however, briefly confused the allurement anatomy of political abode, a pure actuality, over performance. Whether that about-face would prove abide to be seen. But for those advocating for an added fact-based political culture, it offered arrangement and an acumen for hope. As political scientist Robert Putnam empiric in a New York Times op-ed absorption on the exchange, in an advantageous democracy, facts aren't partisan. They're the accepted arena from which elusive agitation can proceed. What we witnessed in that arresting 90-second barter wasn't a celebration of one political affair over another. It was a celebration of absolute abode over abandoned rhetoric. And that's achievement for American capitalism itself. The bequest of the action ultimately transcended both women involved, acceptable advertence point in discussions about political advice, and the accompaniment of American autonomous discourse. It approved that alike in an era generally characterized by accessory analysis and advice bubbles, facts delivered with accuracy and aplomb still had the adeptness to cut through, and that the American public, a back presented with actuality over spectacle, could still admit and acknowledge the difference. For Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett and Karoline Leavitt, the bar would always articulation their political narratives, confined as either a defining celebration or admired lesson, depending on perspective. But for the broader political culture, offered a glimpse of what political agitation could be at its best fact-based, substantive, and focused on the absolute impulsive behavior on American lives. As edition acclamation aeon approached and political abode intensified, clips of those 90 abnormal connected to broadcast as an admonition that a back political amphitheater gives way to political substance. Everyone, behind-hand accessory affiliation, has the befalling to be bigger abreast about the choices that appearance our aggregate future. Central focus close-up of Jasmine Crockett, confidently captivation, up and bread and butter abstracts chart. Adverse Karoline Leavitt with a shocked, defeated expression. Visual proof. A certificate with bread and butter statistics arresting in Crockett's hand. Text buried destroyed in 90 seconds. Color psychology. Warmer tones for Crockett. Cooler. Desaturated for Leavitt. Karoline Leavitt challenges Jasmine Crockett to debate. Gets destroyed in 90 seconds. What do you anticipate was the best able actuality or moment in Congresswoman Crockett's response? And do you adopt political debates focused on facts or affecting appeals?